Good evening, everyone. Welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is the Grand Forks City Council's Committee of the Whole for Monday, December 9th, 2019. Under item 1, welcome and roll call.
Weigel. Dockler.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mock.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I think that is everyone. My agenda hasn't come up. Anybody know what item 2.1 is?
Here.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Paul's gonna
Item
talk about that
2.1, we're pulling up item 2.1, the appeal for 2017 values for IREIT properties.
Yes, we have, my name is Tammy Lazer, a city deputy assessor. Excuse me, we have received 9 properties appeals for 2017 values. Just this morning, though, we received information from the attorney representing them. With that information, we really felt it was good to take the time to review that so that we're proper in our values and our methodology and everything makes sense. We have talked to the attorneys and they have agreed to table it until January 13th as well. Do you have any
Great,
questions?
is there a motion to table? Moved by Mock, second by Dockler. Any other comments? No comments allowed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, same sign, motion carries, excellent. Item 2.2, Northern Plains Nitrogen Letter of Intent Renewal. Ms. Dorset, good
All
evening.
right, thank you. President Sandy, members of the committee, the agenda item that you have before you is regarding an extension to the Northern Plains Nitrogen Letter of Intent Agreement. I'm pitch hitting for Todd tonight to introduce this item. He has attached a staff report with good information for your review. The existing agreement goes through December 31st of 2019, and the request is coming forward for a 6-month extension. MPN officials continue to work on the investment component of the project and remain cautiously optimistic. And we do have Mr. Larry Mackey in the audience here tonight, and that will give you a project update briefing and available for any questions you would have. So I'm going to turn it over to Larry.
Mr. Mackey,
Hey.
welcome back to Grand Forks.
Well, thank you. I always like coming here, except it's a little cool. Sorry to hear, Todd, if you're listening, about your accident, and I wish you a speedy recovery. Let me say this. We're closer to being funded now than we ever have. I am very confident we're going to get the funding for this project. The folks I'm dealing with are working on an LOI right now. I have a general letter from them indicating that they're going to fund our project. And hopefully in the next short term here, before the end of the year, I can say that we for sure have the funding to build this plant. So it's looking very, very good. So I'd be very pleased to hear that you're going to renew our water and effluent permitting letter of agreement. Any questions? Let me say this. I'm not at liberty to say who the funding is coming from, but it's not an individual or anything like that. I was in their offices 3 weeks ago, meeting them with them again face to face. Very confident we're gonna get the funding.
Moved by Weber, second by Marshall. Any other comments?
Let me put one caveat on it. There's always a caveat. You can't count the money till it's in the bank, and it's not in the bank.
Any other questions of Mr. Mackey? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Item 2.3, Joint Powers Agreement with Grand Forks County for 2020 election. Ms. Dorset.
Yes, I will take this item as well. President Sandy, members of the committee, the item that you have before you is regarding a joint powers agreement with the county for the June 9th election. The city of Grand Forks, along with the park and school district, coordinate their general elections to be held in conjunction with the county and the primary election. The county has submitted the attached agreement for your consideration and approval. The agreement does set the terms and responsibilities for the county and the city. Agreement proposes no changes from previous years. Our share is $8,000, and then if it's more than a one-page ballot, we would share 25%. We would ask that you move this forward to council with recommendation for approval.
Any questions? None. Moved by Mock, second by Dockler. Just right down the toilet. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Somebody, so just for your information, somebody on the phone is providing a lot of feedback right now. Thank you. Item 2.4, cost share amendment 2 of agreement for Grand Forks Water Treatment Plant.
All right, thank you. President Sandy, members of the committee, I'm going to pinch hit for Todd on this item as well. The item before you is the cost share agreement with the State Water Commission for the Grand Forks Water Treatment Plant, and comes to you for approval to amend for the additional $9.875 million that's recently been approved for the 2019-2021 biennium. I think Todd did a very nice job preparing a staff report, giving you background information, but to review, the Grand Forks Water Treatment Plant project is on track and on budget and is expected to reach full completion next summer. City has a cost share reimbursement agreement with the North Dakota State Water Commission for 50% cost share for the water treatment plant. We've received almost $75 million from over the last 3 biennia from 2013-15 through the 2019-21 with this $9.875 million cost share approved by the State Water Commission on October 10th of 2019. Can't stress enough how grateful we are for our partners on this, our legislators, and and the funding support and partnership with the state that we have received. Special thanks to Governor and Lieutenant Governor and Senators Ray Holmberg and Mark Sanford with all the efforts, and Todd and Councilmember Ken Veen on all the efforts to move forward with this project and to secure that 50% funding share for the remainder of this project. So I want to give it special kudos to all those. What we asked for tonight, and I should just add too that the mayor has sent out thank you letters to the state for their support. But what we would ask for you to approve the amendment to the agreement in the amount of $9.875 million.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Weber?
Proudly make that motion.
Moves approval. Mr. Marshall seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Great.
Motion carries
Thank you very
unanimously.
much.
Thank you. Item 2.5, City Hall Renewal Project Overview and Construction Manager at Risk. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to be asking for 3 items tonight. It's to approve moving forward with the CMAR project delivery approach for the Grand Forks City Hall renewal project through pre-construction phase with subsequent project phases to be determined in the future. Second is to select PCL community contractors to perform the services as the CMAR for the Grand Forks City Hall renewal project. And then third is to authorize staff to negotiate a pre-construction phase agreement with PCL community contractors. The city did put out for a CMAR. We did interviews last Friday. There were 4 firms that submitted. Very good firms. We actually were very impressed with the quality of the submittals. We interviewed, and very tough decision, but in the end, PCL community contractors were selected. We had 5 on the interview committee, and with that, we're making those recommendations as I laid out in the staff report.
I'll move approval.
Moved by Weber, Is there a second by Dockler? Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Brooks, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So can you describe the CMAR process of how we're going to marry the architect with the construction manager on this project? How exactly does it work?
So on particular on the City Hall project?
Yeah,
Okay.
on any project, but this one, for example.
So in this, I think on the fourth page of the staff report, there's a diagram that talks about shows how we have the owner of, in this case, the city of Grand Forks, owning City Hall. There's a design collaboration that goes on between both the engineer, architect, and the construction management firm. So those two will work, they collaborate on coming up with those estimates and refining those as we move forward. And as we get our sub-consultants, subcontractors, and then equipment suppliers. So just kind of using that diagram, that's the collaboration that goes on between those through that design phase.
So I believe, since we've had a discussion about this already today, I believe that the process is going to be we'll negotiate and select a construction manager at risk, which that's part of what we're doing tonight.
That's correct.
We start moving that forward. The construction manager at risk will work with the architect, JLG,
That's correct.
to do the design, and then they will go out and start looking for bids, correct?
Yeah, to
construction
refine those
manager-
estimates, yeah.
At risk, right, to refine those estimates?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, if I recall correctly earlier, you said if we don't like the bids, we can then go back and change the process to design, bid, build, correct?
Yeah, because what's going to happen, what our recommendation is to just go through the pre-construction phase.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand, why would we, if we're going to get all of the work out of the construction manager at risk through the design phase, why would we not just have them do that work and then go design, bid, build?
Why wouldn't you?
Why, yeah, I struggle to understand if we're going to get all that work out of them and know where the bids are coming. We could then go, because we will, through work with the architect, they would have refined all of the quirks on the design to make sure that we maximize bids. Why would we not then throw that out and go design, bid, build based upon the new drawings to get the lowest price from all of the possible vendors we can?
Why would you not? I guess
There's no reason we wouldn't.
well, I guess
And so I'm just trying to understand, I know the construction manager at risk is used often for doing large construction projects. In this situation, for a remodel, I personally don't think a construction manager at risk is necessary. I think we would be better off, personally, in my opinion, we could pay somebody full-time. For what we're going to pay the construction manager at risk, we could pay somebody full-time to manage this project and still come out way ahead. But again, that's just my opinion, based upon experience that I have. Anyway, there already is a motion and a second on the floor. If anyone else has any comments, you're welcome to comment. Yeah, Mr. Weber.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Sandy, President Sandy. The city is already challenged to hire a sufficient number of engineers to cover the numerous projects we have on any given year. And so we find ourselves reaching out to various consultants on a case-by-case basis. This is just a cleaner process, one that's recognized in North Dakota Century Code, offers a guaranteed price and time. We get multiple steps where we are asked for approval. And so I feel very comfortable moving forward with this process. It's one that has served us tremendously well with the water treatment facility. We've been receiving multiple updates, and things are going quite well there. In fact, on the committee that met on Friday to interview the 4 applicants, one of the committee members was a contractor who gave us the recommendation. He said, actually, while it's helpful for large projects, a remodel like this can be even less predictable. And so having that greater guarantee from a CMAR is particularly important with the kind of project that we're looking at here, because this is, you and I have just recently had a discussion with this in the Growth Fund Committee for the Herald Building. This one's coming to the city because it's City Hall, but these 2 projects will be very closely connected and using the same CMAR, which is one more reason why I think that this makes sense for us.
Yeah, and we also saw the benefits too, to have, we're going to have staff coming out of this building, opening up space, and just due to the proximity of the 2 spaces, which is obviously why it made sense in the first place. But there's going to be obviously coordination efforts that are going to be a benefit too between the 2. So.
Very good. Mr. Veen, would you like to comment?
Very, very short. I'm in support of the CMR process too. I don't see a downside to it, and I don't need to get into all the details, but I would support the process.
Very good. Yeah, Mr.
One
Weber.
word. You and I have spoken about this in the past, and I've taken your questions and concerns, and I took them to that committee. And I appreciate your insights and your wisdom on these matters, and so I took all of that to the committee meeting, and I was satisfied with the answers that I received.
It's very good. Fundamentally, I disagree with the CMAR. When I've had general conversations with construction firms and construction managers, and they love the CMAR concept because they can't lose. They call it a construction manager with no risk, because there's no risk to them. Although people say there's risk, and Mr. Veen will argue otherwise, there is no risk to a construction manager at risk. It's an easy process. We do all the work and we pay for it. So I just disagree with it. I know the downfall, there's lots of downfalls from having to go, being the government agency, having to take the lowest bidder. Unless we start getting bids from people that we don't think are reputable, the contractors in Grand Forks are reputable people. We know them all. We see their work. Our inspectors see their work. I can't imagine we would get somebody coming in that, unless somebody decides to come in from Timbuktu and comes in with the lowest bid, but we can always go and get, references for them. So I just, again, fundamentally, I disagree with it. If I'm the only one, that's okay. I'm tired of talking about it already, and so let's move on. So, Mr. Veen.
I just got to add a couple things. By state statute, we have to do 3 bids. We have to do a general, mechanical, and electrical. And once you do that, you have 3 different contractors. Somebody has to manage that project. So you're going to have to hire somebody regardless to do it. It's one of those contractors or an outside firm. With the CM at risk, they will give you a maximum price by which the project cannot go over. So what you do is you negotiate usually your Division 1 part, and you negotiate a cost to administer, which you would have to pay anyway to do that. So, and they still go out and they will bid every piece of it, and if it comes in less than the maximum they have, we get the cheaper price. So that's where I don't see any loss. Everything is bid. We have a guaranteed maximum price before we even bid the project. It's a win-win.
I disagree. Any other comments? Ms. Mock?
And your concern, can you explain what your concern is with the CMAR? Your concern?
My concern is, and if it takes a simple Google to find all sorts of examples of how consistently with a construction manager at risk, you pay more. You do get a guaranteed number not to exceed. That is true. But in my opinion, the reason for a CMAR is for CYA for government officials. It's so that I can tell people, I told you it would cost $100 million, and it did cost $100 million. And as I told Mr. Weber last week, I'd rather tell people it's cost $80 million and have it come in at 84, and have to tell people, gosh, we did our best, but we're 2% over budget, rather than telling people it's $100 million and paying an extra $16 million. That's just my opinion, though. I believe that's how it works. I believe construction managers love the process because they win. Yeah, Mr. Weber.
And I found that to be a really compelling argument. You and I agreed that we'd both rather do the right thing and take the heat, if that's what it came down to. But my understanding is that the number that we get from the CMAR, if we're not satisfied with it, we're under no obligation, and we could go back to a design bid build at that point.
Right, and I think we should. I think we should have them do all the work and then throw it out and bid it. I think that would maximize our taxpayer dollars. Yes, Ms. Mock.
Mr. Brooks, I assume you probably put some of the pros and cons together. It said in there that typically pre-construction services range from 0.5 to 1%. Like, with what Mr. Sandy is saying, and Mr. Veen's point, do you have any idea what we typically end up paying by percentage for a project to either a contractor or to somebody to kind of manage all those components? Do you know what the average cost is for those projects?
Yeah, the average
For
on
like a
pre-construction.
design bid build where we still have those costs, do you know how it compares between the two different processes?
I don't, but we'll be working on that as we go through negotiations. But yeah, it's typically that 0.5 to 1. In this case, we're thinking, I think the number I was hearing was about 25,000 that we'd be at, so.
That would be an interesting comparison just as we get further, if, how that would compare with more of the traditional design bid build.
I would make the notion that we should have the discussion about what process we want to use for doing a project like this prior to putting things out for RFP. And then I wouldn't be here having this discussion today. I would have had it 3 months ago saying I don't like the process. I could have been outvoted, and then today it would have been the simple matter of awarding this contract. But so I don't know who made the decision to put out the RFP and to put us in this position. I don't particularly care. I would just say that for the future, I think we should have the discussion about what process we want to use first prior to going out for RFP. Yes, Ms. Mock.
I don't disagree. Also, a project like this, if you are coordinating a lot of moving parts, might be more, it might be more beneficial for a CMAR process, and it may have convinced you or I or anyone else of that, but that would be kind of the pros and cons might follow the distinct elements of a project more than just a blanket.
Correct, I agree, yes, thank you. And Mr. Weber? No? Great. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. One grumpy dissenting vote. All right, moving on. Item 2.6, 2020 CDBG program and proposed community services grant program. Ms. Richards, good evening.
Good evening. I have the 2020 CDBG program is pretty straightforward. It's our typical annual allocation process. The second part is the proposed community services grant program, which is kind of in recognition of the findings of our CDBG consultant and others that operating funds are one of the critical needs in both for the services that they provide to those in need in our community and for the agencies that provide them. It's the operating funds that's very crucial. So in terms of the CDBG program, you see the budget before you. It does include a competitive public service allocation portion. We didn't do that the last few years because there had been concerns following a recent HUD audit that our local agencies might have a difficult time managing the reporting requirements associated with payroll for that. But in light of the consultant's findings of the importance of operating funds, we have included that in the CDBG budget. So that's the first part, is just to ask to authorize staff to proceed with our annual allocation process with the budget, and then the schedule is attached to your staff report. In terms of the Community Services Grant Program, we are looking at $125,700 of local funds as a re-grant program that would be available to nonprofit agencies who serve primarily low to moderate income people. Again, this is with the idea that that's a key community need, and if local funding is used, it's certainly much easier in terms of reporting for some of those smaller agencies to if they don't have to meet HUD's requirements for reporting payroll, then the good work can be done without the costly reporting burden. The rationale behind using $125,700 from Fund 2163 is that we currently have 2 re-grant programs in that fund at that dollar amount for 2020. That would be the Special Events Program and the Arts Re-granting Program. So that we feel that this is another kind of similar quality of life program that contributes to making Grand Forks a great place to live, work, play, and stay, and hence the rationale for funding of that amount in line with the other programs and in the same funding source. I have attached some information on the Old Human Needs Program, which was a pre-flood program that did this very thing. I've also got some information about CDBG funding, which is going to be hitting a real variable period. We'll have a large allocation when the corporate center sells. After that, our allocation will be pretty much limited to what we're getting from the federal government, and that's about $400,000 a year, which if you look at your attachment, you can see our program years were quite expansive in a few years ago. And so as we move into this new lower funding model, we're looking at ways to keep those services up there. So that's kind of the rationale for the recommendation to do this on a one-year basis, and then reevaluate what the CDBG funding outlook is over the next few years and adjust accordingly. Any questions?
Any questions? Ms. Marshall?
Just a comment. I wanted to, first of all, just thank your department, Ms. Richards, and the Finance Department and others within the city for finding a way to make this happen. And I think it's going to be a really important investment in our community. I wanted to recognize Councilman Weber in his advocacy on the behalf of this as well. As we heard from the consultant, particularly in relation to the proposed community services grant, supporting people who have difficult lives and difficult challenges in their lives enables them to then be able to take advantage of that housing that's developed for individuals who are low income, and it helps to prepare people and enable people to participate as full citizens in the workforce within our community. So I think there's a lot of benefit that will come from this kind of support. And I just, I'm very grateful to the city for finding the way to do this. Many nonprofits operate on a shoestring and, have to write a lot of grants in order to carry on their very important work, and I think this will be an advantage to the whole city. So I would move approval on both requests.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Dockler. Meredith, can you show me where the Community Services Grant Program, where the $250,000, where is it coming from?
Well, we would look at 90,000 of CDBG dollars would go towards operating funds. HUD puts a cap on of 15%. The city can allocate no more than 15% of its CDBG program budget to operating funds. So that would be the 90% is our estimate. It's all dependent on what we actually get from HUD, but that's our budget number. And then you would combine that with the 125,000 out of 2163 to get for 2020 proposed gets you to that 215 figure that's shown in the program history portion of your staff report.
So we're going to add another line item to the budget for 2020 from Fund 2163 for this program,
That's the request, yes.
Got it.
A
Okay.
budget amendment to add
Yep.
that to 2020,
and potentially for future years.
to be evaluated annually,
Great,
correct?
similar to arts okay, great. Any other comments or thoughts? Seeing none? Nobody? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
This is great, yeah, and thank you all for all your hard work on that. Excellent. Item 2.7, budget amendments for the fire department. One fiscal year 18 Homeland Security Grant, DES Grant Code, EMW 2018 SS 0008, number 168, and fiscal year 17 Homeland Security Grant, DES Grant Code A 1220-001, 2017, R number 19. Anybody have any questions about the budget amendments? Chief, comments?
Good evening. Both of these grants have been before you before as approved to receive these grants. And what these are is, because of the dollar amounts, budget amendment to move the money into the account. This is all reimbursed funds through the state DES for our regional response teams. And it's a matter of moving the monies to be spent, and then it's all reimbursed from the state.
Moved by Weber. Is there a second? Second by Veen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Police Department?
Chairman Sandy, members of the committee, basically the same concept dealing with law enforcement. This again is a state Homeland Security grant based upon regional response teams. This is just merely asking to move the funding that you approved with us from the grant to cover the expenses.
Any comments? Moved by Weber, second by Dockler. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Public Transportation, Dial-A-Ride, Senior Rider. Mr. Bergman, good evening.
Again, this is the same thing. We have the funding that you had approved earlier for the acceptance of federal grant funds. We're trying to move them over so that we can go ahead and do the spending and get the drawdown.
Any comments, concerns? Motion by Dockler, second by Weber. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. And then Street Sanitation and Central Garage, Ms. Amundson. Good evening.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the committee. The budget amendments for Public Works operations are necessary to provide for annual fluctuations in the costs for provision of services that are related to unanticipated costs and weather conditions effect on operations and maintenance. In early 2019, our region experienced a 30% increase in storm events as compared to recent years, followed by historic rains and an early winter storm event in October. And increased workloads related to snow removal activities, debris collection from flooded basements, and branch collection efforts in coordination with the Park District, and resulted in increased labor, fuel, and equipment maintenance costs across Public Works operations. And so with that, we request the associated budget amendments for Public Works operations as attached to the staff report.
Questions? Comments? Yes, Mr.
Just a
Weber?
comment. My. You and your people have been working really hard. Thanks.
Mr. Veen moves approval, second by Marshall. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. It's hard not to pay people. And there's not much we can do about that. Thank you very much. And yes, Mr. Weber said, thanks for all the hard work. 2.8, I'm going to create a special assessment district, project number 8094.2, District 746, paving and street lots for 43rd Avenue Circle from Columbia Road south to South 25th Street. Good evening, Mr. Olson.
Good evening, President Sandy, members of the council. Project 8094.2 consists of installing pavements, storm sewer, and streetlights to serve properties in Southern Estates 12th Edition, adjacent to 43rd Avenue Circle. The project was initiated at the request of the property developer. All costs for this project will be special assessed to the benefiting properties. There's no city share construction on 8094.2. This project is being designed in conjunction with project 8094.1, which is 43rd Avenue and South Columbia Road intersection improvements and traffic signals. According to current city policy, the intersection improvements will be constructed entirely at the city's expense, and both projects are planned to be bid together and awarded to one bidder. The total assessment cost for project 8094.2 is estimated at $457,000. And preliminary total cost for project 8094.1, the intersection improvements are estimated at $745,000, which would be entirely city funded from the Street and Infrastructure Fund 4815. And with that, staff would recommend approving the engineer's report, creating the special assessment district for project 8094.2.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Vean moves approval, second by Marshall. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 2.9, engineering agreement, project number 8094.1, 43rd Avenue South Columbia Road intersection improvements, project 8094.2, District 746, paving streetlights for 43rd Avenue Circle.
Good evening. As previously mentioned, project 8094 is split into two sub-projects. 94.1 is the intersection improvements, 94.2 is the paving, storm sewer, and streetlights for 43rd Avenue Circle. The contracts being considered for approval are for design and bidding services associated with these projects. The engineering firm of Houston Engineering was chosen as the most qualified firm for these projects from the city's pre-qualified engineers list. The city share for project 8094.1 is entirely city funded from Street and Infrastructure Fund. The majority of the design on this project and all of construction will occur in 2020. We're doing the agreement now to get a head start on the design process. All costs for 8094.2 would be special assessed, including this agreement. So at this time, staff would recommend approving task order agreement with Houston Engineering in the amount of $94,910 for project number 8094.1 and 8094.2.
Any comments or questions? Moved by Veen, second by Marshall. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 210, change order number 2 for project 8001, 2019 sanitary sewer repairs. Mr. Olson, doing the heavy lifting tonight.
Yeah. Projects 8001 through 8003 are our 2019 sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer repair contracts, which were awarded to United Crane and Excavation. The purpose of this change order is to increase the contract amount in order to pay for emergency repairs for the sump at landfill cell A. The intent of these projects is to have a contractor available for when these repairs are required, and various accounts will be used to pay for the repairs from the public works utilities. The attached change order number 2 is in the amount of $49,577.48, which brings the total contract change order to $122,700.48, which is 65% of the original bid amount. At this time, staff recommends approving change order number 2 for project number 8001.
Any, Mr. Weber? Gladly moves approval. Ms. Mock seconds, I think? Yes, great, excellent. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Excellent. Thank you. Item 211, ordinance amending sections of city code regarding private hydrant maintenance. Ms. Parvey, good evening.
Good evening, Council President Sandy, members of the committee. Back in September, the staff of the Water Distribution Department and the Fire Department met with engineering staff and community development staff to talk about maintaining private hydrants throughout our community. There was an issue in the state that happened that had some discussion spur about how private hydrants were being maintained. The staff acknowledged at the time that we didn't track our private hydrants the way we should on our GIS, so we've purchased a GPS unit, so we are able to track those and mark those on our GPS, or on our GIS maps, I should say. And then we recognized the fact that we needed to be able to get documentation that the private hydrants themselves have been maintained and tested. So we developed an agreement, which Mr. Swanson has approved, and look through, and then we developed city code, working with him, that would allow us to be able to inspect and test these hydrants for private owners at the city's cost, if they're willing to let us, and then we would include that documentation in our files. We would also inform them if they're in need of any repairs, and code, the way it's written, would allow us to inform them that those repairs are needed, and that we could document when the repairs are made. And then if we needed to, we could hire a contractor to be able to make those repairs at the owner's expense. We know that there's a little over 200 hydrants. We have estimated closer to 500 at this point, and I'm currently working through that process. So we're just bringing this code amendment change before you tonight for consideration.
Comments? Yeah, Ms. Marshall?
Yeah, I was not aware that we had private hydrants throughout the community, so this was interesting. I'm just kind of curious what kind of situations would give rise to private hydrants as opposed to city?
Dan Hansen, our water distribution supervisor, is here tonight as well, but my understanding is that, like, the university owns all of their private hydrants. We wouldn't necessarily maintain them for them. They take care of those, but there's private hydrants on developments near apartment buildings, in mobile homes, etc.
The 500 sounds big. The majority of that is university, like 250 are the university to 300. So we probably have 200, 250 that are privately owned by apartment buildings, strip malls, the mall, All True Hospital, the mill, just large businesses that put their own infrastructure in. We didn't track it. They kind of lost track of it in some cases. We just want to make sure that everything is working when the fire department shows up in an emergency. And this is the best way to do it, is to document that they know they're responsible to maintain it, and if they want, we will do it for them.
Cool, thank you. Move approval.
Great. Moved by Marshall, second by Veen. Mr. Veen, do you have comments?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. I think it's a great thing to do because I've been around enough to see that there are sometimes hydrants we expect are working order and are not. Do we have liability if we go out and validate that they're working and then at a later time come and find they're not, as if there was an emergency and a fire or something like that?
I can pose that question to Mr. Swanson, but the way I understand that code is written is once we inform them, I guess, first of all, they have to allow us or want us to be able to come in and test or inspect the hydrants. If they do that, and then we inform them if repairs are needed, I guess I don't know that there would be liability, but we can.
And that's not where my concern is. You'd have to tell them, and then they may fix it or whatever, and then later you come back and find that it's not working, and we had gone through some type of certification and testing that it was. Do we end up having some liability in that case? The city does, if later, in fact, the hydrant doesn't work when we had tested it and found it did work?
I think the intent is to make sure that it's done annually, so if that occurs, which I hope it wouldn't, I'm not sure whether or not we'd be liable.
Could you check into that just to see where we are with the liability? Because I think what happens on a lot of private property, and maybe better on the university than some other places, strip malls or whatever, who probably have no clue if they work or not. And the other thing that I guess I've seen is when you do have a problem or there's a break or something like that, a lot of them don't even know where their valves are at. Absolutely. And I guess it seemed to me that we should not only make sure that the hydrants are working, but that they're operating and maintaining their valves to make sure that there's areas can be open, closed, and whatever. Now that takes it to a level beyond what you're asking for now. But I think that in the importance of public safety, that's probably something that needs to be maintained, is to make sure that all of that stays in working order. That's what you do with the public system.
Correct.
You know, you flow test them, you check them, you test to see that they're working, and it would be great if the private sector did something similar. And that might be something to think about for the future.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 212. Ordinance amending Grand Forks City Code Sections 15-0404 and 0406 related to building sewers and connections and restrictions on use of public sewers, sump pump discharge to sanitary sewer policy, and program implementation action plan. Good evening, Ms. Amundson.
President Sandy, members of the committee, as you recall, staff provided an informational staff report to City Council Committee of the Whole November 25th, and feedback from the committee indicated an interest in exploring a revision to City Code to allow for winter seasonal sump pump discharge into the sanitary sewer, along with appropriate associated policies and fees. Upon consultation with Todd Phelan, our city administrator, regarding the next steps to approach this, he recommended, and we're bringing back tonight, a revised proposed draft amendment to the city ordinance, and then to have the first reading potentially on next Monday, December 16th, and then for the final reading on January 6th. And so in preparation for that, myself and Melanie Parvey met with Howard Swanson, city attorney, to review what our intent was with this amendment. And on December 2nd, the city attorney reviewed what other cities had in terms of this language. And there were multiple cities in North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Iowa that allowed for variances, all with associated fees, ranging from $5 to $20 per month, or a flat fee ranging from $50 to $200 for what was typically a 5-month seasonal time period, ranging anywhere between October and April. And on December 5th, city attorney drafted a city ordinance in policy language. And so the city ordinance is attached at this time. Tomorrow, we have scheduled a meeting between City Public Works and City Inspections staff to further discuss and develop policy and informational materials for property owners. And city staff anticipates that there are existing properties, some discharge draining systems that include multiple components from simple to complex that we'll need to address. And so staff goals and intents are to provide for a seasonal waiver program for discharge to the sanitary sewer. At this time, we've set October 15th through April 30th. In other words, during specified winter months, including an application process to be reviewed and approved by the Waterworks Director. To provide for the city inspection as a condition of the waiver, and the ability to inspect periodically or as necessary to effectively manage flows, and to provide for benchmark data and to receive feedback in this next year to help us refine the cost of service for these, to provide for this service and part of this program. And also to provide for communications with property owners to effectively manage sump drainage flows in the proper direction and or connection to the separate sanitary and storm sewer systems. And so the responsibilities we intend to be very distinct between the responsibility of the city in terms of code and policies, providing the right information, fees and enforcement, those kind of things. And for the homeowner, as with any of these types of systems, the costs and the risks associated with those connections. And making the decisions on their property, how to proceed. And then with contractors that assist them in regarding new and existing homes and retrofitting and installations per city code. And so to have all of those entities working in that way. And we also intend to provide for city staff working group, as we said, to review, consider, and address specific conditions, applications, and inquiries as needed in the ongoing management of the program. And so our intent, and the ordinance is attached, the draft ordinance, is to provide options for homeowners and also to help us manage the system, both in the wintertime when flows certainly slow down, but there still are areas, and I took a drive this weekend, there still are areas all over town that are draining to the street as we've directed in our city code. And so with the increased saturation of the soils. We're just experiencing more of a problem this year than ever. And so it provides the city homeowners, residents with some options, and at the same time, we're able to better manage the flows for the storm sewer system and then for the sanitary sewer system. And so that's our intent, and the way forward, of course, is tonight we're asking for this to be forwarded for City Council for the first reading for the city ordinance, and in the meantime, we will have additional meetings and handle the management of the program internally within the divisions, and we can bring back some additional information. We know homeowners will have questions, and so that's our intent. In regards to the fees, we could bring back some recommendations for this next meeting, and/or if you have some thoughts tonight on those fees. It's difficult to know right now as far as participation in terms of cost of service for that. And to provide those inspections. We could have a starting point, a nominal fee to start, and then include it in our cost of service and bring it back to you as part of the budget discussions for 2021 as well. So there's ways to do that. So I'm just looking for some feedback tonight, hopefully to move this forward tonight in terms of the ordinance language. And then we have a chance to edit and then also bring back some more information for you for the next meeting.
Mr. Veen?
Yeah, I think this is a great thing. I think, people are kind of stuck and they don't know what to do, and it's nice to have an alternative for them, so I agree with that. A couple things on cost. I was wondering if we could do some level of cost of service, because I'm assuming there's an administrative cost to doing all the work that's going to be necessary for each one. There's probably a small, minor pumping cost and treatment cost. I would assume those would be so small, it'd be probably hard to calculate. But if, in fact, your sewers are running full and you're adding additional flowage, then all of a sudden there is a critical issue to the whole, to everybody adjacent if their pumps can't keep up and somebody keeps pumping into that. So with that said, how do we go about it? I'm assuming you want to turn them on at one time and turn them off. Will there be maybe like a standard detail? Because you'd probably have to do it through valves of when you can put it into your sewer and
Yes.
when not. And you won't, most of them wouldn't go directly. It would probably just go into a floor drain because you're not, unless they tear up their cement to have a direct tie or something like that. So I would assume you maybe have some type of standard detail, although every location will be different. So it's hard to be perfectly standard, but at least something that people would follow that would be able to allow them to just turn some valves to go from winter to summer. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yes, Councilperson Bean, President Sandy, members of the committee, what we've talked about, these different variations that people may have, from as simple as rerouting their sump hose into a drain and then routing it outside in the summertime, to having more elaborate systems with a valve type control. And so that's part of our discussions tomorrow, is to maybe decide how we could present some of that information, whether it's a drawing of what we would prefer to have if they wanted to install valving, if they, on the various types of connections, and what we would require. And so in meeting with inspections, we'll talk about those variations. I think we want to also be cognizant of the cost of doing those things, and what that range could be for homeowners in terms of whether they've installed it themselves or whether they purchased the home and then it was already there and in place. So those are all discussions I think that we can bring back to you in terms of the fee ranges, and then what we will provide and what we will require of those connections.
Will you have a mechanism for verifying then when they switch from winter back to summer?
In the language in the ordinance, we do have the ability to inspect and to ensure that it's being handled appropriately. And so how we, again, tomorrow we'll be discussing more of how we will approach that.
And I think that'll be important to do that. But again, that's a cost that should be incorporated into the fee, I would think, the annual fee, so.
Yes, so the initial would be an inspection to get the permit or the waiver. And that will allow for that initial inspection, and then from there, the ability to inspect. But, some of the considerations is how often we would be able to do that, how much we would want to do that. And mainly, again, it's to provide options for the residents.
Yeah, because I could see just person not thinking of it. I mean, you got it turned over and you don't realize that it's April 30th and you're supposed to have switched it. And it'd be an easy oversight, I would think, for people.
Yes, we intend that there would be public information that would be provided to permit holders and just in general of best practices with sumps and handling that in switching the seasons.
Maybe as part of the permit process, we should require collecting an email address as well as a cell phone, so that on the days they can switch, we can mass text and email people, and on the days they switch back, we text them again. Very easy, in my opinion. So, I think somebody's been mentioning that for like 10 years, that we should do that. Who would that be? Yeah, Mr. Weber?
As Mr. Veen said, this is terribly important. Last week, I think I said some nonsense about a pilot program. That would be pointless. Instead, this really is about helping honest people do the right thing. Because we already have people doing this, and we don't have any way of knowing it, except Mr. Sandy suggested you can drive down the street and see the ones who don't have the ice block out front, and there's a likelihood. And what we're being asked to approve tonight is the kind of draft proposal that we see. You're going to continue to do some work and bring that back for our second reading, but this gets the ball rolling. Would we have an appetite for foregoing fees and simply allowing this variance with public information that now's the time to change it from inside to outside? Does it make sense to impose fees or to try to impose fees? Because actually, instead of fees, what I think would possibly be more effective, although it'd be just as problematic, would be penalties for people who aren't doing it at the right time, rather than a fee for people who are doing it at the right time. But I'm curious, I'm inclined to support what you've got here and to hear your ideas, but that's the feedback that I have tonight. Do we have a motion yet?
Not yet.
I'll move approval.
Move approval by Weber, second by Veen. Are there other comments? I know there was a time when I lived in Fargo, and Fargo was a flat fee of $50, and they didn't make a big thing about it. They didn't send out inspectors. You called up and said, I want to be on the program. They added a $50 fee to your utility bill one time annually. And for me, I just did the plumbing and plumbed it into my main drain and with a valve, and I switched it go and don't go, and they would send out with the utility bill, it would say it's time to switch your sump pumps. And so there wasn't any inspecting going on. I don't think they hired an additional person in Fargo to manage it. They just assume that people are going to do the right thing because they, I guess most do. That's right, because most do. And so I'm all for this change, and hopefully we don't make it too labor intensive for our people, because I don't think that was the intent of this. In my opinion, we should try to make it as easy as possible. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. So, anything else on any announcements tonight? Mr. Weber moves, we adjourn. No? One announcement. Ms. Dockler.
Just a reminder that there is a Ward 2 meeting tonight at 7 o'clock at the firehouse on North Columbia. F5 is going to be sharing what they're doing in the ward and then also in the community for Grand Forks. So anyone is welcome, even if you don't live in Ward 2.
That's great. People should get out there, especially if they have anything they want to possibly help out with, because I know they could always use some help. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good night.
Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport. Your airport. Simply grand.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Excel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Excel Energy, responsible by nature.
Brantley Gilbert returns to Grand Forks Fired Up Tour 2020 with special guests Chase Rice and Brandon Lay. Alara Center, Saturday, May 2nd. Get tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. The brand new album Fire and Brimstone drops everywhere October 4th. Brantley Gilbert, live in concert. Check more at BrantleyGilbert.com.